The air war over Ukraine is entering a dangerous new chapter. Russia has now confirmed the first combat use of a new jet-powered strike drone, even as Ukraine launches deadly counterstrikes deep inside Russian territory. From experimental weapons to hypersonic missiles, the conflict is accelerating on both sides of the border. For the first time, Russia has used a newly developed strike drone known as the GERAN-5 during air attacks on Ukraine in early 2026. Unlike earlier versions, the GERAN-5 is jet-powered, significantly faster, and capable of carrying a much heavier payload. At roughly 6 meters long with a wingspan of more than 5 meters, the drone represents a major leap in Russia's long-range strike capability. Military analysts say the GERAN-5 carries a warhead weighing around 90 kilograms and has an estimated range of up to 1,000 kilometers. It uses satellite navigation systems known as Kometa, combined with commercial electronics and a more powerful jet engine than previous models. The design bears striking similarities to Iran's Karar drone, reinforcing long-standing claims of shared technology and cooperation. The escalation is not one-sided. In Russia's Voronezh region, a Ukrainian drone strike killed 1 person and wounded 3 others, according to local officials. Debris from a downed drone fell on a residential building, killing a young woman later in hospital. Authorities said air defenses intercepted 17 drones, but damage was reported to apartment blocks, private homes, and a high school. The Voronezh attack came just 1 day after Russia launched one of its most intense bombardments of Ukraine in months. Hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles struck targets overnight, killing at least 4 people in Kyiv. For only the second time in the war, Russia also used its nuclear-capable Oreshnik hypersonic missile, a clear signal aimed not just at Ukraine, but at NATO and its allies. The strikes followed reports of progress in talks between Ukraine and its allies on future security guarantees should a US-led peace deal emerge. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that negotiations with American officials were ongoing. Chief negotiator Rustem Umerov remained in close contact with US partners, even as missiles and drones filled the skies. Ukraine's military said Russia launched more than 150 drones overnight, most of which were intercepted. Zelensky accused Moscow of exploiting harsh winter weather to target energy infrastructure, attempting to plunge cities into darkness and cold. He said the attacks underscored what he described as Russia's disregard for diplomacy, even as negotiations continue.
Currently, extensive restoration efforts are underway across our cities and our communities in Kyiv and its surrounding region, specifically in the Dnipropetrovsk, Lviv, Kirovohrad, Cherkasy, and Odessa oblasts. Repair crews are practically always working in the Sumy, Chernihiv, and Kharkiv regions. Maximum efforts are being deployed to restore vital life support. The Russians are taking advantage of the weather, the cold snap, and are trying to damage as many of our energy facilities as possible. It's quite evident how much they truly respect America and all its diplomacy. Just last night, there were more than 200 Russian drones and also a significant number of ballistic missiles, primarily targeting Kyiv.
The primary Russian strategy involves attempting to completely incapacitate urban centers.
It is crucial that every city administration understands this objective, the enemy's goal, and prepares for full counteraction, for real work for the sake of its citizens. One must not run away from problems, but rather actively resolve them, especially when there are ample resources for this, as in Kyiv, the most financially secure city in Ukraine. All necessary backup schemes must be in place. Oreshnik was used again, this time against the Lviv region. This was again strikingly close to the European Union's borders, and this, from the standpoint of medium-range ballistic missile use, is the same challenge for Warsaw, Bucharest, Budapest, and many other capitals. Everyone should understand this in the same way and with the same level of seriousness. If the Russians aren't even attempting to invent a credible justification for deploying such weaponry, then no amount of personal connections or any rhetoric will shield you from the consequences. There must be a system of joint actions, a system of common defense, real and effective. Do we have such a system now? That's a question without an answer, because everyone in Europe has the same doubt. Will they defend his capital if something strikes Putin's mind?
A blunt warning from Moscow has reignited fears of a wider Russia-Europe war. Putin ally and deputy chair of Russian Security Council Dmitry Medvedev lashed out at France and its allies, accusing them of pushing Europe towards direct conflict. His remarks followed new plans by Britain and France to deploy troops to Ukraine after a ceasefire. Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's former president, issued a sharply worded post on X targeting France and other European governments. He accused what he called Europe's ruling elites of deliberately pushing the continent toward war. Medvedev dismissed proposals to send Western troops into Ukraine, saying Moscow has repeatedly made its position clear. Russia, he warned, will never accept European or NATO forces operating on Ukrainian soil. Medvedev's message ended with a chilling line. "Come on then, this is what you'll get." Attached to the post was a video showing several large explosions, filling the screen with fire and shockwaves. He slammed Macron, accusing him of indulging in what he calls pathetic bullshit by speaking of troop deployment. The warning came just days after Britain and France announced plans for a multinational force in Ukraine should a ceasefire be reached. French President Emmanuel Macron said the deployment could include thousands of French troops. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the move would create a legal framework for Allied forces to operate on Ukrainian soil. The plan includes securing Ukraine's skies and seas and rebuilding its armed forces to deter future attacks. Russia's foreign ministry also responded swiftly, calling the Western plans militaristic and increasingly dangerous. Moscow warned that any foreign troops, bases, or military infrastructure inside Ukraine would be considered foreign intervention. Such deployments, the ministry said, would pose a direct threat not only to Russia, but to Europe itself. Russia declared that any Western forces on Ukrainian territory would be treated as legitimate combat targets. Despite Moscow's warnings, Ukraine's allies say they are pressing ahead. At a major meeting in Paris, leaders from Europe pledged expanded support for Kyiv. The plan includes layered international security guarantees, training, equipment, and air, land, and sea backing. Officials say the goal is to deter any future Russian attack and bring an end to the nearly 4-year-long war.
This is a vital part of our ironcast commitment to stand with Ukraine for the long term. It paves the way for the legal framework under which British, French and partner forces could operate on Ukrainian soil, securing Ukraine's skies and seas and regenerating Ukraine's armed forces for the future. We discussed these issues in detail today, and so I can say that following a ceasefire, the UK and France will establish military hubs across Ukraine and build protected facilities for weapons and military equipment to support Ukraine's defensive needs. And with our coalition partners, we've also agreed significant further steps. First, that we will participate in US-led monitoring and verification of any ceasefire. Second, we will support the long-time provision of armaments for Ukraine's defence. And third, we will work towards binding commitments to support Ukraine in the case of a future armed attack by Russia. Are still ahead. So we're here today to keep driving that effort forward. But we can only get to a peace deal if Putin is ready to make compromises. And so we have to be frank. For all Russia's words, Putin is not showing that he's ready for peace. Over the last few weeks, we've seen the opposite. Further horrific strikes on Ukraine, killing and wounding civilians, and cutting off power for millions of people in the dead of winter. His forces hit a hospital in Kyiv just yesterday. And he's tried to distract from peace efforts with unfounded claims of attacks on his residence.
And I know there's a reluctance to talk about Greenland today.
On the question of Greenland, I've been very clear as to what my position and the position of the UK government is, both in statements I made myself yesterday and in the statement that was put out earlier today. I've been equally clear that the relationship between the UK and the US is one of our closest relationships, particularly on issues on defence, security and intelligence. And we work with the US 24/7 on those issues.
This meeting seals today a significant step forward reflected by the Paris Declaration, which provides robust security guarantees for a solid and lasting peace. This declaration by the coalition of the willing marks for the first time that operational convergence has been achieved among the 35 member states of the coalition, including Ukraine and the United States of America, in building robust security guarantees. The presence today of President Trump's special envoys, the commitments made by President Trump himself, particularly what he said during the meeting held in Mar-a-Lago late last year with President Zelensky, demonstrate the United States' commitment to building peace and assuming its responsibilities. This coalition of the willing marks a new phase that I believe aligns with our position and, moreover, is consistent with American wishes. American support and participation are very important for many countries. They are very important for many countries that are members of NATO. They are very important because American capabilities, sometimes with exclusivity on certain components of these security guarantees, make them key. Recent weeks have marked a change since there has been an American commitment.